Hello, lovely students. How are you today? Let's have a little chat about what we did last week, where we're going this week. Okay, last week you wrote your research questions and topics. You have all received feedback on that. If you haven't received feedback, you have, so please go double check that. I went and double checked and I think it is showing out for everyone, but if it isn't, let me know. Also, you may have received feedback and no score, so you need to go check in. Anyway, like I said before, writing a research question is an iterative process. So there's a really good chance that you received feedback on how to fix your research question and you won't receive a score until you have a fixed research question. And the reason for that is I don't want you to be docked because we don't have a lot of time to get through this portion of the class. So you will receive your score once your research question is revised. That being said, you have until tomorrow to submit your revised research question. If I go in on Thursday and there's no revised research question emailed, you're emailing it to me, then you will get the score on your original one and still get to revise your research question. There were two groups that were a little iffy about if they wanted to change their research question. If you were one of those groups, please make sure that you email it to me if we were unclear in our exchange, or if you were unsure if you submitted a final research question via email, just go ahead and send it to me again. 2 emails are better than 1. And if you have not submitted your revised research question, let's go ahead and do that as soon as possible. You have about 24 hours left to get that done. A couple things about those research questions. Remember, they need to be both specific and measurable, so they need to mention the group that you plan to study and what you plan to study. In most cases, it's belief, intent, perception, that kind of thing. And for most of you, you will either be surveying adults ages 18 to whatever, or BYU Idaho students. I believe that is what everyone is doing. If that's not, it's just send me an email to jog my memory of that, but we probably want to stick with those two groups. A couple of things. Some people have had some questions. Well, if we use those groups, then we can't generalize it to the entire population. That is true. You can't, and that's okay. Most studies aren't generalizable to the entire population. You're going to see that if you go through BYU Idaho students, you are going to have a significant overrepresentation of females, and they are probably going to be over 35. It's just what happens. It's because women over 35 are more likely to respond to surveys. If we were wanting a truly random sample, not random sample, if we were wanting something truly representative of the population, we would oversample from certain groups. For example, my sister does research at Duke University. She does medical research, and in order to fill their studies, they have a study that includes the general population, and then they want to study the effects of certain cancer drugs in African Americans only. They have to recruit significantly more to fill that group than otherwise, because it's really hard to get African Americans to participate in these kind of medical research studies. If you are hoping to find males between ages 18 and 25 to participate in your study, you are going to need to survey 10 to 20 times the number of males that you think that you need in order to get just those few to participate. So if your results are skewed and don't match the general population, that's okay. Just start thinking about why those things are occurring. Likely you are female and it is really hard to get males to answer your study. Likely males respond to studies differently than females. Maybe they aren't on social media sites as frequently, like Facebook or Instagram, where a lot of those surveys are going to go out. Maybe they are more likely to walk around campus with their headphones on than females, and less likely to take your paper and scan the code to do your survey. Just start thinking about some of the things. If you are one of the groups that really wants to try and get everyone, then you need to start brainstorming ideas of how you're going to reach a more representative sample. In some cases, you have a lot of males in your group and they are going to be the ones that reach out and pull their friends in. Things like that. Just start brainstorming, but remember, the purpose of this class is to show you how to go through the steps. It doesn't mean that you have to create a perfect research study, but I want you to know how to do it so someday you can find yourself in a situation and do something that is a bit more scientific. Okay, this week, rewind last week really quick. You turned in your practice word review features. I will get you feedback on that. I have something to post to the whole class, just general feedback that I see, problems and areas that we need to work on. Okay, Now let's talk about the synthesis grid. That is the next big thing. The synthesis grid, I know it seems like kind of an irritating little assignment, but it is really important. The synthesis grid is what you're going to build your lit review outline on, and the lit review outline is what you're going to build your lit review on, and the lit review is what you're going to build your final paper on. So this is actually really important. As I'm sure you've seen in the directions, it says you need to find 6 articles, but in the final lit review, you will need 10. If I were you, I would find as many articles as I can and fill out the synthesis grid on all of those. The reason for that is whether you want to do it formally or not, those additional 4 articles are going to need to go through that same process before you can include them in your final lit review. This is a vetting process. It's where you understand how to boil down the main points, the most relevant things, so that it can be eventually put into something larger. You do not want to skip the synthesis grid step for those 4 additional articles. Like I said last week, if you need 10 total sources for your lit review, you probably need to read between 15 and 20 articles. Not every article you read is going to be worthy of being included in your paper. I know that is like, you're starting to hyperventilate a little bit. I might start to hyperventilate too if I were you, but here's the deal. We talked about it last week, but I just want to reiterate. Read the abstract of those articles first. Okay, I've read the abstract. Awesome, this article seems great. Okay, now flip on down to the discussion conclusion section. It is the last section in those peer-reviewed journal articles. Read that. If that seems relevant, then go back and read the remainder of the article. If you read the abstract and it seems not relevant to your project, throw it away, start over. If you read the abstract, it seems good, you read the discussion, it seems terrible, throw it away, start over. I don't want you to read this entire article, sift through all of the scientific jargon, get to the end and be like, I don't know if that's relevant, but I don't think I can do that to myself again. So we're going to condense. Abstract, discussion. If it's good, go back and read the entire article. If it's not great, move on to something else. Remember that you are looking for scientific journal articles. What does this mean? It means that it is peer-reviewed. It is submitted to a scientific journal. That means you are going to have to dive into the David O. McKay Library to pull that information out. You're going to be diving into EBSCO. Any of those things mentioned in the Week 3 Prepare assignment, which is called Searching for Research Articles. This means nothing from the CDC will be accepted, nothing from the WHO will be accepted, nothing from any website will be accepted. If it ends in .com, you might as well not do this assignment. If it ends in .gov, that's probably really great background information, but the synthesis grid is asking that you go a step beyond that. So we're looking at some of those deeper articles. Yes, they will be difficult to understand as you are reading them. They will be hard. I am very sorry. The vocabulary that a lot of them use will be a bit complicated. Take a step back. You don't have to understand it perfectly, but that abstract really will be helpful, and that discussion section will be as well. The discussion section is going to be the so what. That's where they interpret the results. So even if you're a little shaky with your statistics, they should spell it out for you in a way that you can understand what they're saying in that section. And also they'll tie it back to previous research. So they'll say, these are the results of our study. This is what it means. This is what it means in the larger context of research. So those 2 sections should be fairly understandable and very useful to you as you come up with that summary that needs to be included in the synthesis grid. I included an example of the synthesis grid in the course announcements. It is the announcement titled Sample Synthesis Grid. I highly recommend that you look at that. The student that did this went above and beyond with all of her assignments, but this one shows how to create a synthesis grid that is truly useful to you as you are going through those later stages of the paper. Well, it seems like this may just be too much information. It's really not, because eventually you're going to have to write this paper on the lit review. And without this information, with this very specific information included in the synthesis grid, you're going to have to go back to the literature, which is really annoying because you're trying to do all of these other things. So the goal with this is that that synthesis grid is good enough that when you're writing that lit review, you probably don't have to go back to the original source. You probably can just pull from this and write your paragraphs. That is the goal, at least. The sections of the synthesis grid talk about the argument or main findings. So that's going to be your summary, the evidence used. So those are going to be the results that you find, and any other things that you need to be aware of. So those other things that you might need to be aware of could be that it has a small sample size, a limited reach, it used a previously used survey, things like that. Just interesting, need to know facts that maybe don't fall into that main summary or results section. So go through and do that. If you do all 10 sources, that's totally fine. If you just want to do 6, that's fine as well. Just know that those missing 4 sources are going to need to go through the same process as well. So this week you're doing the synthesis grid. Next week you're going to take that and you're going to build it into an outline. As you're going through this, you'll start to see some main ideas, main subtopics kind of filter out. So just keep aware of those. You might want to categorize them. I believe this has, this asks you to put them in at least 3 categories. So start to do that now, because that will really help you as you go through and do your outline next week. Also, if I were you, I would create the citation. There is a spot in the synthesis grid that asks you to do that in-text citation. I would do that now, because later when you're writing that outline and then finally the lit review, you can just copy and paste that citation throughout your paper, and that will really help make sure that you have consistent citations throughout. If you are unsure how to dive into the David O. McKay Library, please let me know. You should all have access to it, but you probably will have to sign in to have it. So if you just open a tab in Chrome and type in David O. McKay Library and start going, I don't think it will give you access to all of the sources. It needs to know that you are BYU Idaho students. So you will have to use your username and password, sign in, and it should let you go forward with that. I believe RefWorks and Write and Cite work the same way, that you will need your BYU Idaho account information to do that. And you should have it because you're all signing into Canvas. So please make sure that you do that. If you run into a problem, please let me know. I have had a couple of people ask me, do I need to find research on my specific topic? For example, if you are looking at flu vaccinations in college students, should your research focus on flu vaccinations in college students? Or can you just look at flu vaccinations generally? Well, you need to look at flu vaccinations in the population that you are hoping to study, unless it doesn't exist. For example, if you were looking at flu vaccinations in college students, you looked, there's no information. Okay, then next you would move to flu vaccinations in adults ages 18 to 25, because that's the general range for college students. No information there. Then let's look at flu vaccinations in adults ages 18 to death. Okay, no information there. Then look at flu vaccinations and attitudes generally. That's not going to be a problem if you are a group that's looking at flu vaccinations in college students. There is a plethora of information available to you. That was just an example. But you may have a very narrow scope and need to keep broadening it. That is both bad and good. It is bad because you will not enjoy this data collection, the secondary data collection process, but good because you're showing that there is a gap in the current literature. And your literature review will allow you the opportunity to say, we've chosen to do this topic because there are gaps in the existing literature. Nothing has been done with this particular population. So start looking for some of those holes as you go through this. Next week, I will be checking the personal application assignments. I know it's supposed to be a surprise. I guess if you don't watch this video, it will be. But next week, I will be checking those personal application assignments. So let me know if you have any questions. Please make sure that you are getting all of those in. My expectation is that you will have a personal application assignment submitted sometime the week of January 27th. So the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, or 31st. I will start checking on February 1st for those assignments. If you have nothing submitted from that week, you will receive 0 points for that check. But just wanted to keep you aware, there are some weird things with grading that. You probably won't actually receive a score on that, but I will send you an email. You will not receive a score in the gradebook, because if I enter a score in the gradebook, it will make it be out of the entire 140 points, which means everyone will instantly be failing the class as soon as I put in, yay, you passed your first check. So I will send you an email if you do not pass your first check or if there's some issue with it. Otherwise, assume silence means that everything is just peachy Let me know if you have any questions this week. I will be going through and grading those word review feature assignments and then posting that feedback back to the general class announcements, because many of the issues that we see are class-wide. So we don't need to do that to each individual student. And I want it to be easily accessible for everyone. Get working on those synthesis grids. Remember, you have to dive into the actual university library. Google is not your friend this time. The CDC is not your friend. The WHO. None of those are your friend. The library is your friend. So enjoy. And I'm so glad you don't have to go to the stacks.